nation and economy. We do not intend.
Like I said, with me in the studio, I have Prince Adebayo. It's a great pleasure to have you in the studio this evening. Thank you for taking out your time to be with us in the studio. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Mercy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
God bless Nigeria.
Amen. May God bless Nigeria. Now, let me begin by saying, according to President TINUBU, and I quote, our budget allocation underscores the administration's strategic priority, particularly in advancing a renewed hope agenda, achieving its developmental objectives. Now, the 49.7 trillion naira budget that was presented before the joint session of the National Assembly, there are so many questions around it, and the questions around it is, how realistic is this budget? From your own end, we want to understand what your analysis or summary is on the budget.
Well, the budget is suffers from illusion of money. It is a weaker budget than the previous budget, which in itself was too weak and underperformed.
Okay.
And if you want to know how immediately in trouble the budget is, you listen to the comment by the speaker, where the speaker admitted that last year's budget, 2024's budget, underperformed, was not fully implemented. So, and the speaker is their speaker, is from their party. They are the same Renew Hope caucus together. So the budget suffers from what in economics we call illusion of money. Even though nominally the amount they are announcing this year is bigger than that of last year, but the purchasing power of that money, of this year's budget, is far less. So where they were hovering around $33 billion last year, they are barely treading water around $28 billion this year. So they are already $5 billion underwater. So it is not a budget that anyone should celebrate in particular.
But some members of the APC have argued that the budget is futuristic, so it's not something that Nigerians should expect results today. But now, another thing there is looking at the budget. Are there any form of future realistic in it?
You see, if you look at the budget this way, if you are coming from Lagos to Abuja, and the person who is estimating your cost of transportation estimates the cost of transportation to carry you up to Lokoja. So you know that this budget that they've given to you for your transportation from Lagos to Abuja, the money will finish in Lokoja.
Okay.
So automatically you don't need to begin the journey before you know that the budget can't take you to Abuja. So when you look at the budget that they've designed, it is weaker than last year's budget. The purchasing power is weaker. And they have highly optimistic parameters, even to arrive at this abysmal budget. So you don't have to be against them to know that the budget is full of contradiction, the budget is problematic, and because they are the people who also wrote last year's budget, and in last year's budget, they're working under a particular set of parameters. They did not meet those parameters. They are not going to meet the parameters of this year even. I have given many interviews where in the critical analysis of their budget, I see that they don't meet even the medium-term expenditure framework that they set for themselves. And the MTEF is supposed for 2 years. So they haven't met them. So in the long and short of it, they've made an attempt to write a budget. That budget itself is not binding in the sense that it's a mere proposal. So they have to find the money for the budget, and they're already looking for the money by borrowing. And when they do borrow, and if they succeed in putting the money together, the objectives set in the budget will still not be met because the budget's objectives are not in sync with the reality of the budget. So it is an argument between the words and the numbers will always win.
But then, when we talk about the debt servicing, it is targeted at 15.81 trillion naira. But the worries around it is the exchange rate and the fluctuation of naira. Do you think that this will, you've already said the budget does not look realistic, but in a way, do you think the debt servicing, which is targeted at 51.881 naira, and looking at the fluctuation of naira and the exchange rate, do you think it will in any way affect the budget? Let's even assume in the first place if it has some set of realistic or ambitious in it, will it affect it in any way?
You see, what I'm letting you know is that the budget, this is not how to write a budget. If I was in government, I would not write my budget this way. Because there are two ways to deal with budgeting.
So how would you have written your budget? Because I know you ran for that same office in 2023. So how well would you have written your own budget?
You see, there are two things you achieve in a budget. Government pays its bills in a budget.
Okay.
So just like a government, just like a housewife. When you're going to the market to buy foodstuff, you pay rent, you buy fuel in the car, you pay the children's school fees. So you list all the obligations that you have, your household obligations. Now, you will now make provision for that. Now, the government needs to do that for itself. Pay salary of its workers, pay this bill, do all the money it owes to contractors, do all of that. So, and how they do that is that they try to increase their fiscal stability by finding ways to earn more money. Because the fiscal aspect is the first thing that they have to do. You have to see that you earn more money than you spend.
Okay.
If you earn more money than you spend, you have a surplus. If you earn money and you spend all of it, you have a balanced budget.
Okay.
If you earn less money and you spend more money, you run a deficit. And if you run a deficit, you have to finance that deficit. And there are two ways you can finance a deficit. You either finance a deficit by what we call quantitative easing, by printing more naira. In which case, if you print more naira, then you know that there will be inflation, because there will be more naira chasing fewer goods and services to buy. And in terms of foreign exchange, the naira will become weaker because you have more naira chasing dollar, pound, and other currencies. Okay. Second way you can do it is to borrow more. If you borrow more money, you put the taxpayers in trouble and the future taxpayers, and you have a lot of conditionalities attendant to the money you borrow. And if you borrow more than you can pay, you are risking a default and your credit rating is going to drop, which means your cost of borrowing will even go higher. So they have violated all of these rules in one single budget. So I think that they do not know what they are doing in terms of economic planning, especially in terms of fiscal management. Now, second point is that you will now manage the monetary side. You want to set the price of money. Monetary budgeting is to set the price of money. You want interest rate to go up, then in that case, you yourself go to the market to try to borrow money locally. If you try to go to the market to borrow money locally, if the government is competing with private companies, private entities to borrow money, then interest rate will go up. If the interest rate goes up, it means that private sector people want to make investment. For example, if you set up like this TV station, if you were thinking to go to a bank to borrow 1 billion naira for any activities, if you get to the bank and discover that interest rate is now 40%, you are less likely ready to borrow than if interest rate was 15%, for example. Okay. So then, because of all this monetary management, which resulted from their fiscal mismanagement, you will now have to deal with the issue of what is the benchmark for inflation. Now, they have set a benchmark of 15% for inflation because they are around 35% on inflation now.
There's 4.6%.
Yeah, so they now want to come to 15%. And if your objective is to achieve 15% inflation, you are already a failure.
Okay.
Because if you are a mother, you are carrying a baby, you know the healthy temperature of a child. And if the child's temperature is too high, like getting to like 45% or 45 degrees, you cannot say, I'm going to reduce the temperature of that baby to 44 degrees, because that baby will still be sick. Your aim is to reduce the temperature of the baby to a normal temperature. So the objective they ought to pursue and the duty they owe us is to reduce inflation to single digit. But they don't have the discipline to aim for a single digit inflation, because if they aim for a single digit inflation, they will have to account for the money they are collecting, and they have to spend within the money that they are collecting. So because the reason why government allows inflation to happen is that they are trying to steal money from members of the public by making sure that your value of the money in your pocket is reduced by government devaluing it without telling you.
Okay.
So, and the way government devalues money without telling you, if you want to know, is any government that budgets to spend more than it earns, you know that that government is trying to devalue the money in your pocket. And if the money in your pocket is devalued and you still need money for basic services, then all of you will bring that money out and inflation is going to come. So I don't agree with the budget at all. I don't agree with the idea. I've signaled to them how to do it, how it should be done, how I will have done it, but they're doing opposite, and they're going to put us in a lot of economic quagmire.
All right, viewers, at this point, our phone lines are now open for you to call in to join the conversation. Now, sir, I have a question from what you just said. You made mention of borrow more money. We complain, are we not the same people that complain about how the government borrow excessively? And one would again wonder, if we have something like the crude, which is a God-given gift, do we really need to borrow money to sustain the economy? And you talked about reducing the inflation to single digits. Yes, of course, you understand how the affairs of a country should run, because that's why you contested for that office in the last election. Now, help us make sense when you talk about reducing the inflation rate to single digits. And what do you mean? Are you advocating for the government to borrow more money, or are you saying it's the proper thing to do in borrowing?
They shouldn't borrow more money. What I'm saying to you is that before you decide, I'm taking it back to the elementary component of it, because it looks to me, like I have said on many occasions, that the government suffers from basic economic illiteracy. They don't understand economics.
Okay.
They understand politics, they understand many things, but they don't understand economics.
Okay.
The economic team is not coordinated, and they don't know what they are doing. Number one, what will signal to you where inflation is going is that when government is safe, is spending more money than it is earning, the government is running deficit. The deficit in government terms is what you call debt. If your salary is 100,000 naira every month,
okay,
and you go home and you and your husband earn 100,000, and the husband earns 100,000, you earn 200,000. When you go home and you do a budget between you and your husband, and your budget is 300,000, you and your husband are running a deficit. Because your combined income is 200,000, okay, and you are spending 300,000 every month, which means you are running a deficit. Do you get the point I'm making?
Exactly, yes.
So that is what the government is doing. The government is not able to coordinate the economy the way they should and collect the money that they are due to collect, increase the amount of money they are collecting, and ensure accountability and manage the spending for quality and for value for money, to the extent that they don't go and spend more than they are earning.
Okay.
So by spending more than they are earning, they are automatically unable to control any other thing. Because when you do fiscal mismanagement like they are doing, the next thing you want to do is that, because they are also influential in the printing of the naira, okay, the central bank is their bank. So they put pressure on the central bank to do monetary easing, and to spend money to give them money to spend that they don't have. So they do that by borrowing locally, by issuing treasury bills. They also go outside to issue bonds. You must have heard when the finance minister, the Honorable Wale Edu, was saying it was a good day in Nigeria because they went overseas to London to raise Eurobond, and it was oversubscribed. So they go outside and they borrow money at rates that are difficult to manage in the long run. That is why the debt servicing is very high in this year's budget.
Okay.
Why is it high? Because the money they borrowed previously they have to pay in this budget. So to illustrate it for Nigerians to understand why I say that they should put pressure on the government to run the economy better is just like the illustration I gave earlier. If a couple that earn 200,000 a month spend 300,000 every month, they have to borrow that 100,000 from somewhere. And when you borrow 100,000 in January, because you overspend in January, and the money is given to you for 3 months, which means by March you have to pay the money back. So then in February you earn 200,000, you also spend another 100,000 extra. So you are owing 200,000. By the time you get to March, you are owing 300,000, which is 150% of your entire monthly income.
Okay.
And by the time you get to April, the money you borrow in January is due to be repaid. So in your April budget, you have to first find money before you pay any other bill. You have to first find money to pay the interest or the payment of the money you borrowed in January. So you are in tatters. And that's why their economic planning is in tatters. So, but the private person at home, husband and wife, don't have the means to print money. So the government has the means to print money. So when the government needs to pay back the local debt, they will print money. When they want to pay, because the local debt is in Naira, when they will raise new money in Naira to pay the previous one. When they want to pay the foreign loan, they have to take new foreign loans or pledge some of our income. That is why President Buhari used the crude oil we are producing now, used it to secure loans in his time. So when TINUBU came, President TINUBU came, he has to use the crude oil that we are producing. NFPC cannot collect all the money for us because we have already pledged the money for our past borrowing when President Buhari was there. The same thing President Buhari saw when he came when President Goodluck Jonathan was there. So this pattern of budgeting is not based on making Nigerians productive. And if you look at the whole numbers that go around, they are not able to increase employment. And it is by increasing employment that you are going to, one, get people to be able to pay their bills and earn a good living, and you are also going to be able to collect taxes from the employment and profit of enterprises. So this budget is meant for the government people alone, has left majority of Nigerians behind. I don't agree with the budget at all. It's a big error. Okay.
Now, if you had won the office of the president in the last election, how are you going to run the affairs of this nation without borrowing? Is that possible at all?
It is more than possible.
Okay, so tell us how.
Okay, this is how you do it. Number one, you must be able to collect the money that is due. And I've exposed extensively where these monies are due. Money is due, they are still stealing the crude up to now, despite any story they're telling you. Okay. So all that crude that be stolen, that is money that should have come into the coffers. Many people in high places are living luxuriously, they are doing big business, they're not paying taxes. There are a lot of tax waivers that have been given. There are a lot of concessions that are places where government is supposed to collect money for the people, but they've been concession to private interests. So overall, the duty of the government is to make sure that the treasury officers collect the money that belongs to the country. So given the size of our population, given the enormity of our operation, given the mineral resources and everything that is on ground, you will see no reason why the government cannot collect at least 70%. If I was in government, or when we get to government, our aim would be to try to collect 100%. But even in their own calculation, they say that they are able to collect 15% of GDP. That they themselves admit that they are only able to collect revenue of 15% of the GDP. So they are under collecting. So it's like you have a 100-room hotel that guests are in the hotel, and the accountant of that hotel is only able to collect money for 15 rooms out of the 100 rooms. So how would they be able to maintain that hotel? So you have to ask yourself, okay, the other 85 rooms that you are not collecting the money, where is the money going? Maybe the guests will come in and not pay. Maybe the staff will collect the money and not report it. things like that. So when government is not able to collect our revenue, when, for example, we have gold and other solid minerals, and they are being stolen right under the nose of the government, and that money is supposed to be in the revenue, is not there. So this is where the problem lies. When I addressed the Chartered Institute of Taxation at the annual conference, I pleaded with them. I made illustration to show to them that the taxman has to be an honest man, and that the revenue that they are collecting for the welfare of the people. Okay. And the government should ensure that they can do that. That's the first thing you do. Second thing you do is that you spend the money that you receive prudently. So when you spend 15 trillion on a road that I will have built for 4 trillion, so what have you done? You've lost enormous amount of money. So from the collection leakages, it has insufficient collection. From the expenditure leakages, procurement leakages, you are already knowing the budget. That is the reason why, instead of the government to leave the central bank alone to defend the naira, to defend the value of the naira, to control inflation, the central bank, the federal government pounces on the central bank and bends their hand to allow government to spend more money than it can earn. It is this same political party, the APC, that allowed President Buhari to spend 37 trillion without authorization. And they spend that money by ways and means, which is borrowing. And when at the tail of the handover, they went to the National Assembly and hurriedly and hush it up and retroactively approve the wastage of all that money. That is why there is trouble. There's not. Nigeria has enough money to make every Nigerian comfortable. The budget we have this year is about 10% of what the budget should have been. So the budget of the 45 trillion, what is that? The budget should have gone far up to at least $150 billion, and the exchange rate of naira to the dollar should not have been anything above maybe 350 naira to the dollar. If they manage to do that, then we can start climbing up from there. But they haven't done any of that. So this budget has left Nigerians behind. So if you can call them, they come to the room, we debate it, and you can see whose point is different and whose point makes the difference.
All right. Politicians have a way of telling us how they want to do so many things without telling us how. You said, and we know clearly that our main source of revenue is through the crude. And we see so many cabals and non-transparency in the oil sector. So if you were to occupy that seat, or if you were to be holding the office of the president, how are you going to address that issues? Because over the years, we don't seem to understand what is going on in oil sector. And up to date, nobody understands what is going on and how everything in the oil sector is being run. If you were to be in that office, how are you going to sanitize the oil sector?
If you combine the illiteracy of the government with the illiteracy of the media, you get the same result. Because there is nothing mysterious in petroleum sector. You need to know that you have oil wells, you have the flow stations, you need to meter them to know the quantity that's being produced. Everybody who is in the media, any proper media house inside Nigeria ought to have a petroleum sector desk where there's an expert in that sector who is a part of your editorial board. So if the government tells you, oh, we have only sold 2 million barrels, you should have somebody in-house who will say, no, that's not the number that you're supposed to get. So nobody should wait for the cabal to decabalize itself. It is the people of Nigeria that would have to speak out. Just the way during the campaign I was saying that 80% of the crude was being stolen. The Navy argued with me after a while. They said, oh, maximum, I exaggerated the number. But they admitted that it was being stolen. And everybody is talking about it. So this is the kind of exposure. Who
are the people responsible for this?
The person responsible, we've mentioned it, is the federal government itself. And if you say federal government, at that time, I had President Buhari responsible. Now I will hold President Bola Ahmed TINUBU responsible because he is the one we elected to be there. And he is the one who is appointing NNPC people. He is the one appointing the Ministry of Petroleum people. He is the one appointing Chief of Naval Staff. He's the one appointing the air staff, the police, and everybody who is involved in this cahoot. He's the one who is in charge of our maritime waterways. So during the campaign, I went to Escra Force, and I did a video where I was pointing to all the ships and marking their ballast to show, look at the ballast of this ship, what is. So they need to account for all the ships that enter our waterways. So it is a responsibility. Then, what of agriculture? When you fail to secure the country, and you fail to invest in agricultural production, how are you going to grow your GDP? It is a shame that anyone will say that the most money we make is from petroleum. Petroleum should be like number 11 in the amount of revenue we generate, because we should generate substantial revenue from agriculture and agro-allied. We should generate from solid minerals. Okay. We should generate from services, overflight charges and other services, because of the resources that we have in the country. We should generate sufficient amount of money from corporate taxation, because if you grow the economy and the GDP rises, and the companies that are listed on the stock exchange, the companies that are doing big businesses will be able to get better profit, and you can use corporate taxation to do many of the things you need to do. So if they are not ready to, and that requires you to govern, let me say to you, like, if you give 2 or 3 different people the same 100 hectares of land, if one farms the land intelligently and comprehensively, and the other farms the land anyhow, and the third person does not farm at all, the same adjacent 3 plots of land will yield different results. The one who knows how to farm very well, who farms every single square meter of that land very competently, will yield a lot in harvest. The one who just went there casually, not seriously, will yield a bit. The one who did not farm at all will yield nothing. So that is how you see it. You need to govern Nigeria well. Every square inch of Nigeria is full of money. That the government needs to be in charge. All the unpaved roads that you refuse to do, that's where you should have gotten toll money or that revenue. So if you want government revenue to increase, you need to govern the country well. If you have gold, diamond, iron ore, copper, lead in the bushes, and you allow bandits to surround the place, and they are stealing the minerals and taking them away, because you refuse to govern, how are you going to get revenue? But if you govern well, the way we say you should govern, in line with chapter 2 of the Constitution, you govern the country well, you secure it, every square inch of Nigeria will bring money. All that is in this budget this year is what Nasarawa State alone should give to Nigeria. It's far less than what Kogi State alone can give to Nigeria. And it's far less than the value that Plateau State, in the heydays of tin mining, has been able to give to Nigeria. So Nigeria is still stuck at the budget level of the 90s, whereas the population has gone 3 times. So the government is not governing well. That is why they are not able to generate proper revenue. So they need that skill to govern and to husband the economy properly. And then when they have realized this money, to spend the money wisely and to create all kinds of economic multiplier out of the spending, not to throw the money into the black hole. Look at how much money is going towards security and defense. What is the money being spent for? What is spent on? But where
the government has argued that if the nation cannot be healthy or function properly if we don't live in a serene and secured environment. Perhaps that's why they had to budget.
It is not security is not about how much money you throw at it. You can govern with modest expenditure.
What do you mean by modest expenditure?
You can secure. Do you see any sign that the average policeman, civil defense, road safety, DSS, army, soldiers, naval ratings, and Air Force airmen You see any sign that they have any welfare? So where is the commitment to do any work? When all the money is going to esoteric procurement that don't have impact on the ground, when the defense industry does not exist, to the extent that we cannot feed our soldiers are starving, our policemen are starving. So all the trillions, where are they going? So where are they housing them? Do you see police being properly housed? Do you see any of the uniform security services being properly housed, properly equipped? So where is the money going? It is not the amount of money you announce. It is how you spend it. Let me go back to an illustration of a household. You cannot tell your neighbors, my husband and I have spent over 1 million naira in our house this year. And they ask you, what did you spend it on? And your husband say, oh, 300,000 on beer. And you say, oh, 400,000 naira on makeup. That's 700,000 gone. So it doesn't matter. A family that spends only 300,000 and spends it well on food, housing, education is doing better than you who spend 1 million, and most of it is on cosmetics and alcoholics. So that is why I am saying that the spending pattern of this government is a lie compared to the objective they set. You say you are renewing hope. You cannot renew hope where you cannot get people food. Where government has to make an announcement that, please, if you want to donate food to Nigerians, come and take our permission, because the number of people who are going to rush to come and collect this food will lead to stampede. Where government is now criminalizing charity. A government that has left its people destitute is now making criminals, arresting people who try to give food, and there's an incident, stampede, and all of that. The government is not focusing on how is it that we can reduce the population of those who will be willing to risk their lives just to get food. In the Ibadan incident, what I saw in some video is a situation where some parents are throwing their children across the fence because they couldn't be patient enough. They couldn't wait because of the hunger. They couldn't wait for the gate to be open. They were already throwing their children from across the fence into the place so that they could be first in line or early in line to collect freebies. So if that is the kind of economy you are running, is that how to renew hope? That's why I'm saying we need to be careful regarding how we appraise this budget. These budgets are not academic experiments in a secondary school teaching you basic economics. They are the value statement in words and figures of how the government wants the people to live in 2025 and beyond. And I am highly and mightily disappointed that despite all the promptings and all the suggestions and all the amount of talent in the country that knows how to manage the economic team is full of this kind of contradiction, and they are not touching even the basic beginning of trying to get people out of poverty and insecurity.
All right. Perhaps there might be hope at the end of the tunnel when we look at the projection of the budget, where it has it said, according to the budget, it says it targets to bring inflation decline from 34.6% to 15%, and exchange rate at 1,500 per dollar. Also, oil production at 2.6 million naira, 2.6 million barrels per day.
Yes.
But now my fear is the inflation has seen massive increase since the current administration, where it grew from 28.2% to 34.6%. And also, before the administration of President Bola Ahmed TINUBU, dollar was at 464 naira per dollar. So now, per naira, yes. Now, if the government says that it's going to project inflation will decline from 34% to 15%, does this look achievable to you?
First, I said earlier, I don't agree.
With the projection, you don't agree with the projection?
No, the projection is wrong, because you cannot say that a double-digit inflation is your target. If you don't know how to govern, just leave the place. You have to target a single-digit inflation. You have to do it massively.
Okay. Because,
like I said in my earlier illustration, if you have someone who is sick and their BP is already 180 over 140, you know that this person can have a heart attack or a stroke any moment. it is not good for the doctor to say, oh, I'm going to reduce your BP to 175 from 180. Yes, there's a critical number that is healthy for blood pressure. So you must target that healthy number and do anything you can do to get to that number. So you cannot, if a driver is over speeding at 280 kilometers per hour, you don't say, okay, reduce to 200, because the 200 is already too dangerous as well. You have to target and say the proper speed is 100. So you have to reduce yourself to 100. Okay. So you cannot take an unhealthy target that is lower than the current unhealthy target. The fact that it is lower is not a desirable number. There's a critical number that is good for the economy. Then I don't want to criticize the fact that you are saying you want to bring the temperature down or you want to bring the blood pressure down, but you are feeding the patient with a lot of salt and sodium, which is going to continue to drive the blood pressure higher. So both ways, both in terms of precept, which is the target, and in terms of practice, they are wrong. Therefore, I don't want to waste my time on that one. On the issue of foreign exchange and all of that, they drove it there. They have to find a way to bring it down. But in reality, in their own reality, they believe that it will be at 1.5, I mean, 1,500. Yes. If that's their aim, then it's already going towards that. But my concern about that is that it is not organic. Because their intervention, I don't want to criticize the central bank because it's supposed to be independent. The independent in action, the way they are working towards it is to try to defend the naira by looking for money and throwing the money into the foreign exchange market, which is what Emefiele did and could not sustain. So I'm just thinking it is good to desire some in foreign exchange. If you want to keep the value of your currency, will call something parity. You are traveling towards parity. That is to say, your mind at the vanishing point is where your currency and the naira and dollar are at par. That is the infinitum that you're working towards. However, as you are journeying towards it, you have to be sure that it is the fundamentals of the economy that are driving you, because otherwise, adopt my policy and you fix it. But they don't want to adopt that policy. They said, no, we don't want to fix it. We leave it to market forces. Then if you leave it to market forces, the only thing you can do is to remove any imperfection in the market and allow supply and demand to play. Okay. But they are influencing supply with unsustainable and artificial injection of money that they could have used for that in the economy. So I disagree with them fundamentally. So I'm not too worried about them meeting the target or not meeting targets, because I don't see any reason why, with some of the investment that they are making, they cannot push crude oil production to about 3 million barrels a day. They can push that. Why? Because if they just stop the amount that is being stolen, not even just additional fields, like I've seen that they signed some agreements. I'm kind of impressed that they are signing some new agreements, some new fields, so especially the ultra deep fields and some of the abandoned marginal fields. Some local companies are coming to try to revive some of the marginal fields that are out of production for some time. Okay. However, what you can do immediately that will not wait for the lead time for those marginal fields and ultra deep field to yield is that the current yield, you must be able to reduce, if not eliminate, the stealing of the crude. If you do that and the money enters into the coffers, then you will see that the number that you are recognizing will be higher than the number that you are recognizing now.
All right, you mentioned you're kind of impressed the achievement they've made in certain areas. So, and over time, members of the APC have said, give the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu more time. And we heard Mr. President talked about some achievements under his administration. He talked about bringing down the security, managing security crisis to a certain level. He talked about the GDP seeing some level of growth. And I want to believe, do you agree with that analysis?
Anybody who says give TINUBU more time doesn't like TINUBU at all.
Why? Why do you say so?
Because you cannot give more time to a government that has limited time. All the time we say we should give to Buhari, we gave him, but could he go beyond 8 years? So if you are in college studying for a 4-year degree and you failed year 1, most of your courses, someone say give her more time. Are you going to spend 6 years for a 4-year course? So you don't give time. You do what you need to do that moment.
So to you, a failure is a failure?
It's a failure because...
And this administration has failed.
Of course, it's obvious. Evidence is everywhere. I don't know if it's affecting you, but most people that I talk to, it's affecting the people inside government, it's affecting them. So what you need to understand is that you don't give government time. Because everything is well timed. You are elected for 4 years. You can only write 4 budgets. This is your second one. So you only have 2 more to write. So why will I give you more time? But I need to point your error to you now, so that you can correct the error now. They can amend it. For example, why will I wait till 2026 to shout when there's error in 2025 budget? And you have the power now to bring amendment to the appropriation bill and correct the errors that I'm talking about. I raised the same alarm in 2024 to some of their budget, and they did some supplementaries here and there. 1 or 2 of the supplementaries made sense, but when they go into the mood for supplementary, they ruin it by also bringing some supplementary appropriation bills that are worse than the one they were trying to amend. So what I'm saying is that it is not a good thing to say for a country whose population growth is not waiting for anybody, whose poverty rate is not waiting for anybody, for whom time is running against in all things, to say now that we need to wait. Do you tell a hungry person, don't eat today, wait for President TINUBU? You can't say that. So the approach should be that government should get it right first time and get it right on time. And anything they get wrong, we are even more beneficial to them to raise alarm and not get them deceived. Because many people who were saying give President TINUBU more time, President Buhari more time. When Buhari left, they criticized him. Let me give an example. When Senator Adams Oshomale wasn't a senator at that time, when he was chairman of the APC, he was always going on there saying give President Buhari more time. Give President Buhari more time. And we were criticizing President Buhari that he wasn't doing what he promised. But when Buhari left, and Oshomale was making comments about Buhari, he said Buhari was a failure. So the person who said give Buhari more time ended up saying Buhari is a failure. So those who say now, give President TINUBU more time, if we don't shout, we don't bring alternative, President TINUBU will fail, and they will end up saying TINUBU was a failure. We don't do like that. We don't do that because we know that the failure of government has serious implications on the lives of the Nigerian people. And secondly, we have a duty as the opposition to let people know that the current errors are not the only alternatives, that there are better alternatives. So if you are in the hospital and one doctor is giving the wrong medicine to the patient, the other doctor will say, no, this medicine is not helping the patient. What are these alternative medicine? So that is the work of opposition. We want the patient to be well. We all work in the same hospital. But one doctor is prescribing what is not helping the patient. The other doctor should not keep quiet and say, well, let the patient die or give him more time, in which case the patient may go into irrecoverable degeneration. So that is what we are trying to do here.
All right, thank you so much, Prince Adebayo. Well, I would have loved to ask you some questions around the tax reform bill, but sadly, our time do not permit us. So this is where we'll have to draw the curtain on today's episode on Spotlight with Mercy. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you around.
Thank you so and much. God bless Nigeria.
Amen.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to all Nigerians. And thank you for the invitation.
All right, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And keep watching Captain Television. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Like he rightly said, my name is Mercy Emelite. Have yourself a great evening.